Welcome to Uncaged, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to commerce of tomorrow. Today we have Brigette Wolf on the show. Hi, Brigette.
Hello, how are you?
Brigette is the global head of SnackFutures at Mondelēz. I'll let Brigette explain more details about what SnackFutures has been doing, but essentially SnackFutures is the arm that drives innovation for the company and is actually pushing the aggressive global growth for the business around the world. So Brigette, I'll hand it over to you. Before we get too deep into me quizzing you about your background and things like that, maybe tell us a little bit more about what SnackFutures is up to.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, Mondelēz International is one of the world's leading snack companies. It's about a $26 billion company in 80-odd countries. Really big footprint of the brands. You may have Oreo, Toblerone, Trident. Where SnackFutures sits is we are the innovation and venture hub of that. So we saw where some of the most amazing growth was happening, and those that were moving with speed and consumer centricity was the startup community. So we created SnackFutures with the intent to disrupt not only ourselves, but the industry, and doing it in two ways. One was to think and behave like startups, so really put that hat on almost in every step of the way. And then the second was to invest and partner with startups. So we've got the invent and the invest side of the portfolio going. We've been busy. We can talk about that.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to go deeper in that. But before we talk about what you're doing today with SnackFutures and how it's continuing to evolve and really help drive Mondelēz going forward, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this awesome job and how's your career evolved?
Yeah, I would say someone early on said it's a marathon and not a sprint, and I was too immature, ambitious, or impatient to really listen. But I will say now, as I reflect, each one is a different lesson that you can build on. I joke, I'm a reformed investment banker, started in M&A and in financial services. And then I was classically trained. So I have been with the company for almost 2 decades now, starting with some very small brands like the Stovetops of the world, and then moving to the bigger brands of the Oreos and Belvitas, and then most recently of how we decided to set up SnackFutures, which is the super baby brands of the future.
That's great. So I think it's a story where you've been able to pull from kind of that M&A background that probably gave you a little bit of that rigor that you just need to evaluate stuff, and then the CPG experience going through. I always think that taking those brands that nobody else wants, right? Those small brands are great learning curves, right? You can really grow, and it sounds like you have.
Absolutely. I mean, I think every assignment, you just have to figure out where you can make your impact and learn. And you're right, those small ones are scrappy, but you're super empowered to do almost anything you want. The big brands give you glory, but there's a lot of eyes on it. So either way, as a marketer, it's always fun seeing what you create put on shelves.
That's
the impact to consumers.
I think that's great advice, Brigette, for young folks coming into the industry. I had a boss once that told me, I asked him, I said, well, what should I work on? I joined Leo Burnett in Chicago. And I said, what brand should I try to get on? And he said, ask the CEO, what is the worst performing company and brand? What is the brand we're going to lose? And work on that, because that's the one you can basically do the most innovative stuff on. So I'll never forget that. I thought that was good advice at the time. So tell me a little bit more about SnackFutures and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, so it's a small team. It really is designed to have, we even named it, right? We self-named ourselves as SnackFutures. Is where is the company going and where are consumers' needs going, even when they don't know it, right? So this is really leaning out over our skis to say, where does the world of CPG snacks intersect now with almost every industry, and where are those opportunities? And I often joke, if I could take a wand and snackify that occasion and that need, we'll do that. And we're seeing that in areas of stress and sleep, in how you think and focus. We clearly have a lockdown on indulgence and connection with some of our brands, but in other places of well-being, there's a very long runway for us to go. And so we're doing things like Dirt Kitchen Snacks, which is a plant-based, veggie-forward snack, very different both in its name and design to what we have. Another brand called Kapow, which actually takes its heritage from Mondelēz's chocolate lines. It takes the cacao fruit that normally is wasted as we make chocolate, and we're one of the largest manufacturers of chocolate. And yet, there was this huge opportunity to upcycle the fruit and going back to that. And so we're actually taking the fruit component and making Kapow fruit bites. So really different ways of looking at our supply chain. We have a brand in France called Nokoe, where we actually talk about planet first. So SnackFutures, we have a mantra that it is good for people, kind to the planet, and deliciously fun, because it's snacks after all. But can we put that lens on being responsible in how we do this? So for Nokoe, it's a carbon compensating brand, locally sourced, produced, very much designed for the millennial who is the eco-conscious consumer. That for so many, we're all worried about the planet, but to participate in it and to be hyperactive and composting in your backyard and doing all these other things, it's hard. So how do we help consumers and invite them in to participate?
That's really great. And I think obviously connecting the brand with the ESG initiatives makes a ton of sense. And the food, the products, the snacks that you're making sound absolutely delicious. And probably I should have eaten more before I did this interview, because you're making me hungry.
You know what? They're all on D2C, so they are nationwide. But we behave differently. They're small, so they're geographically centered right now in Los Angeles. So even if you saw it, I think what's so different is instead of a national launch, right? How do we build things? And it's a little bit of how do you take all that classical training, all the discipline, all the fundamentals, everything you know about a business and a brand, and measuring it, but doing at a really, really like on the ground way, and then working our way up till we have a site to scale.
I love it. So you are at the center of product and brand innovation. And I've thought a lot about the topic of innovation this year because, in my life, I would say that with my business, we are wildly efficient over the last year. It's been, an incredible, efficient growth year for us. But in terms of like innovation has been harder to do in a remote work context. And I just would be curious, what are your thoughts about that?
I think it's a chance for us to really go back to the people. And, we often talk about whether it's on a big brand or a new one, innovation is about solving problems, whether it's a business problem and a new process or a consumer problem. But lots of times we've gotten, I would say sometimes removed from, we call them consumers, and they're almost another alien group that we watch behind glass doors or we listen to. And yet there are people who are eating and are struggling or thriving, surviving, depending on where you are in this past year. And so it's an opportunity to actually step back, like, what is going around? Where are the core needs? Where are those behavior shifts? And what are like those just delighters that somebody said, finally, somebody's done this. So I think it's a different style of listening. It's really trying to get as empathetic as you can with the person who you're trying to serve. And by empathy, it's not just the need in that occasion. It's, what does their apartment look like? And what are they really doing? And then every once in a while, stepping back, being like, would you do this as a person? Like, would you eat like this? Like, who eats like this? And then you got to rewind and start over again. So I think even having a mindset, and the startup community is, it's brilliant at this because you get knocked back all the time in innovation, is to hold things lightly and to iterate. So we talk a lot about test and learn, but it's really about what have you learned, what can we tweak, and what can we now activate and change. And so those cycles, I think in a world of innovation, have been faster And then we've just found some novel ways of engaging consumers to make sure that we are checking in with them and listening to them.
I would imagine that this remote works structure that we're living through right now presents opportunities for snacking, right? I mean, that must be a really interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, do a 24-hour diary, right? You haven't left your chair, whether it's in your bedroom or your dining room, wherever you've set up shop, because so many of us are remote. For those who are going outside, everything needs to be prepackaged, or birthday parties, we know no one's putting their hands in a bowl anymore and sharing, at least not yet. So how do we think about packaging differently? How do we think about, if I am home, yes, people are cooking a lot more, but we have done snacking studies. They are snacking through the roof, and that is not going away. And those bite-sized meals and the in-between Zoom calls of what works and the different pick-me-ups still hold.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how many Oreos I've eaten during this pandemic, for sure. But throughout this work that you're doing, it's really exciting. I mean, certainly playing with new ideas, taking kind of pieces of perhaps kind of old products and kind of restringing it, rethinking it is fascinating. But what's bringing you the most joy right now from what you're working on?
Yeah, I think one, solving really unique needs. We talk about, for us, driving incremental spaces. I love our core portfolio. Who doesn't love an Oreo and Toblerone? And I'm actually pretty much an avid gum chewer to many. But seeing opportunity where I can also constantly say yes with my family, like, go have as much dark kitchen you want. I mean, it's vegetables and nuts. Go have the cacao fruit. Having an ability to start from scratch and really listen and have consumers say, no one's done this before. And then I think the coolest piece is having a team that is, I'm blessed, they're magnificent, and they bring it to life. There's a lot of innovations that kind of, we can all ideate in a room and think of really cool stuff, but to bring it to market and see that come to life is, I would say, something that Mondelēz has pushed more than many, and most certainly our CEO has given us that support and runway to push those boundaries in snacking.
That's great. And I mean, your team has futures in your name, so you must be thinking a lot about the future and a lot about trends. And I'd just be curious how you see things evolving over the next couple of years in the snack space.
I think we're going to continue to see food do more for us than sheer taste and calories and energy and gut fill. What we're learning so much about ingredients is what you put in your body radically can change physically how you feel and mentally and emotionally how you feel. And everyone knows, like, a nice piece of chocolate can calm you, but there's other pieces. We invested in a brand called Uplift, and it's a prebiotic. So that gut-mind connection is so strong. We just launched a little test of brand called Milligram Snacks, which are nut butters, but they're powered by mushrooms. And there is a huge curve of, you made the comment of what is old is new. It's not just the brands. There's all these old foods out there that Mother Earth basically has given us. And there's a way to be like, it's really cool. And I think people now are looking for ways to take care of themselves in much smarter ways. They're fine tuning, with all of the self-monitoring going on. And then there's still joy. I mean, there's going to be hyper indulgence. That's not going away. Self-care takes on many forms, and so, what's indulgent can be a radically healthy indulgence and that pampering what's good for me. It could be a totally emotional and social connection. So I think you're going to see a little bit of both, but a little bit more refined.
Yeah, a little bit of indulgence, a little bit of new ways of thinking, maybe a little bit of healthier snacking, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I was thinking about this, Brigette, when I first heard about Mondelēz. It was breaking, separating from Kraft, and it called itself, I think, the world's largest startup. And so it only makes sense now that Mondelēz is the home of building these new startups with SnackFutures. And so I thank you so much for telling us a little bit about what you're working on right now at Mondelēz.
Thank you.
Today we've been talking with Brigette Wolf. Brigette Wolf is the global head of SnackFutures at Mondelēz. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Brigette. UNCAGED is a show that gives a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. It's great to talk to you, and we look forward to talking to you again. Cheers.
Thank you.